Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Raw and Wild Hearts podcast. I'm your host, Lori Rising, Star Channel and Sacred Medicine Guide. And welcome to today's very special episode called The Call of the Queen with Inarra Griffyn. It's true. I am dropping a divine exchange. Y'all know I don't do interviews very often anymore. So if I do, it's going to be lit. So your first invitation right now is to drop in. Get rid of the multitasking, find the space, get fully present, make it ceremonial, and let yourself not only hear, but receive the transmission that Inara and I are reverberating out. It will take you to new heights. It will open new paths for you. And we want to hear about it. So take a screenshot of this episode and tag both of us on IG. Let us know what gets created from this space right here. So I am dropping this for the Aquarius full moon that's in conjunct with Lammas. Lammas is the cross-quarter holiday between the summer solstice and fall equinox. It's the peak of harvest when things are the most ripe, when they're the most ready. And Inara has so much wisdom to share with us all about the support and how we can move forward from this cycle and season and beyond our programmed way of pushing and efforting and grinding and forcing. Yeah, it is so good. It's so good, y'all. Also, I just want to share that this episode is for everyone. It's for all genders. It's not just for our queens and sisters. It's the queen energy, the receptivity, the intuition, the cycles, the seasons, the flow, the divine feminine in all of her glory within all of us. That softness that we come out with in a confidence and a container to go where we've never gone before. And y'all, a big theme right now as we continue to accelerate, the light continues to pour onto the planet, is community. The community that holds you in all of your power, in all of your queen energy. Inara has showed up for me in such a beautiful way. She came in physically a month ago and really held me in her pillar of strength through one of the most intense transformations that I've been through yet in these last few years in this soul-led business and in where I'm going with my own signature and my own soul's blueprint and mission. And I can't wait for you to hear it. So I'm not going to go deeper into it right now. You'll definitely love it as well. And so, yeah, just enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about me and my programs, just come on over to my hub at therawandwildhearts.com. Check out the links below. Definitely get on my email news list and into my community because there's so much happening. There are big transformations coming up. And if you've wanted to work deeper with me, you're going to have a new option in the fall. And yes, I'm just going to let you know that there's actually an option right now. There's one space. I haven't even released it to my communities yet, but I'll just say there is one space to do more of this fully supported, fully guided, unfolding journey with me over months. If you're interested, if your cells are like, ooh, just hit me up, send me a message. I would love to dive in and chat with you. Oh, I also have a free Manifest Like a Champ masterclass that I'm now offering once a month. You can come every month. We have to stay in the arena. We have to practice. We have to be intentional. We have to be committed to stay on that precipice and jump into what we haven't known before to get to where I am now, which is a full soul's liberation and freedom that is exquisite. It's ecstatic. It's orgasmic. This is the natural high that we were meant to come here and live. Beyond substance, even beyond plant medicine, because we are the plant medicine and we have this access point in a way that I don't know anyone in humanity ever has. I can't say that for sure, but dang, it's enormous. It's huge. And don't let it pass you by because yeah, that's how big it is. I am speechless. I have no words because if you work with me, you know that I move you so much deeper beyond words. I move you into vibration, into frequency, energy, and sound. And that is our new language. Okay, y'all. Without further ado, let's dive into this amazing time, space, and exchange. Inarra Griffyn is a visionary business guide offering a spiritual elixir to creatives and entrepreneurs to help them gain expression, visibility, and opportunity. She helps stimulate and enhance her clients' vision so that they generate, manifest, and experience luxury at their pace in perfect timing. To do this, she uses the ancient cycles of the seasons, moon and solar alignments, and events such as the equinoxes to help them activate new cycles of transformation. Inara works one-on-one for one season with you to help you navigate daring waters. Please welcome Inarra Griffyn. Hello, Inara. Thank you for joining the Wild Heart Revolution.
Oh, so glad to be here from London, England. Da, da, da. Yeah.
Yes, I am so pumped. This is at the most divine time, and I cannot wait to unleash you into the community. You have been unleashed in my world, and now it is time to spread that energy, spread the love in such a gorgeous way.
I'm with you. We have an amazing connection. And I think anything that comes up, in fact, you just asked me, any questions, I'm like, no, let's just go. Because I know where we go is where we need to for the whole community. It'll be amazing.
Absolutely. And that has been a theme of mine for so long, especially as so much Aries. Let's go. Let's go. So before we go, I do like to start with a toast or a prayer to the Wild Heart Warriors in our light, especially our dark, and in all of our magic and glory. May we continue to elevate consciousness through honesty, humor, humility, gentle care, soul-wrenching growth, and ownership. And to us, and to the call of the queen.
Woo!
Yes.
Housh. So mote it be.
Yes. Oh, Inara, please just take the stage and introduce yourself. And then we're going to get into our weaving that we have began that is about to be a huge, beautiful, light-filled grid web.
Okay, well, whenever I am asked to introduce myself, I have got so many facets, but I think that for the purposes of this connection, would be to say that my entire life started as an awakened already being. So I arrived on planet Earth in Yorkshire. So I'm English and not from London. I was from the cold north, and I had a grandmother who was my first spiritual teacher. And I believe that I've been taught by her many lives, actually, or we've had a connection many lives. But in this instance, I spent a lot of time with grandma. And there was this key moment, which I've told you about, when I was 9 years old. I walked down to the end of her garden, back garden, and I was wearing a nightie. So there was this flowing feel as well. That was part of it. And then I looked up at the stars and the moon, and I had this download. And I was 9 at the time. And the experience of it was deep connection to not the world, it was like to everything that is, to aliveness at the core. And when I attempted to explain what that was to her, she then said this little phrase to me. She said, there are people who dance naked on the moors and they heal people with milk, and they're called witches and healers, and they are your people. And I thought, they are my people. So at the age of 9, I had permission from somebody who I deeply connected to go on this journey. So by the time I was in my 20s, I'd moved back to England. I'd lived in Canada. My parents emigrated to Canada. And the only thing that I really deeply resonated there was with First Nation people. And I remember that. It was First Nation identities. We were taught a tiny bit in school. It was very boring. I was into history, and we were taught everything about, white nation and all of this. However, what I was interested with these little smatterings of indigenous peoples. And so by the time I chose to leave Canada, because I felt it was not my land, even though I love it and I go back regularly, parents still live there, I had this feeling, I've got to go find the English witches. I've got to go find the English healers. And within that, not just English, Irish, Scottish, that conglomeration. And so I did. I found them in my 20s. I ended up getting initiated, and you can stay at that level if you want for the rest of your life. You'll have a relationship with your high priestess as being like a baby, like she's mummy and you're the baby, and you can just stay like that. That's fine. But I had a massive calling to teach. And so I had an extra initiation afterwards, which took a few years on a path, a solitude path, to be able to teach people. And that really was my calling. So that's a big chunk of me, and it's all about Celtic connection, I would say. Then I started training with people all over the world, many people of color. So it was this broadening of the perspective of the world's spiritual path. And then after that, I got involved in massive business. And when I say massive business, I mean, like, I'm now working with billionaires. So I'm saying massive in the sense that they've got the big visions of, they're not scared of the money. They're not scared of bringing in what they need, the resources. And not to say that all billionaires are really conscious or whatever, they aren't. But I have been brought into that level of business to bring the consciousness to it. And everything that I do when I teach people as a spiritual business coach, really, I prefer to work with them for a season. So if I can, I work with cycles, seasons, moon, sun, ancient festivals. And we are upon one of those, which we can talk about later, with the full moon tomorrow, and also with Lammas, which is one of the ancient festivals. So all the teaching that I do, I bring it into the business that I teach, and I cause success, but it's coming from a very different place than, I've got a training in economics and this and that. So I think that's a good intro for your people.
It's a wonderful intro, and it just gets me so excited. It lights me up. And it's interesting as you talked about that, because of course it takes me back to my childhood where I had a spiritual separation from my lineage, right? Because I was adopted and I came in knowing as well. And the permission that I got actually came from the trees. It came from the animals. So as a kid, I just spent so much time sitting in a tree, or if my parents couldn't find me, they would have to go down across the highway and find me in this little shed that had all these cats, and there was this dog there, and I would just spend hours and hours there. And that was like the resonant vibration for me. And so I've really come to this place where it's like I came in to have a human awakening. Like the spirit has always been on point. I just didn't have the reference for it around me. And so my human awakening has been bringing me back and back and back to that. But also, how do I work with the human collective and understand their experience? Because I had such an elevated, like, starseed knowing, right? And yesterday I was just asked this question in a ceremony for Lammas. I've been in several of them already. And it was, what was your power word? And I feel like your power word right now and my power word are so good together, because I know yours is daring. And
Yeah.
mine right now is potent, like potency, just really
Nice.
speaks to my cells. And
Very nice.
and then we were asked, what's your gift? And I have so many. And I think that's why I aligned to you so deeply. I magnetized to you. It was a force of nature, which isn't what I'm used to, because I'm used to, taking my time and kind of putting the brakes on when it comes to financial risks and jumping. And you were the catalyst to one of the biggest breakthroughs I've had so far, especially in a soul-led business that I know we're going to get into. And so one of the things that came through for me is I'm an ancient encoded holder, keeper, translator, right? I'm a heaven on earth translator. And so I just love, it feels like this vortex where we're coming together now in these micro communities that are going to become more macro. And the power that is rising is it's here. It's no longer, we're not looking for it. It's here. It's tangible. It's like tap in. It's in the field. And this is just so wildly exciting for me. And I know for you too, because we've been holding
Yeah.
this. We've been holding
Yeah.
the vibe. We've been holding that knowledge. And it's like that torch to come
Yeah.
through at this time.
Absolutely. And I think that what I have observed is that over the time that I got involved in property, and I'll go into a teeny weeny detail about that, that I never trained in property. I actually was always in the arts. So I trained in film studies in Toronto. I was still in Canada. I trained in literature, history as well, but did not touch anything to do with finance, business, or whatever, right? And I was a photographer professionally for a long time. And I would say at the 20-year mark, around that, I had this deep feeling that there was something else coming, and I had no idea what it was. And it was just, there was some logic to it. It was a little bit like, well, if I want to live in a city like London, which cost a lot, I need to be making a lot. And I had no idea what a lot was. That expands as you get older. But I had this feeling that there was an end cycle happening. And so on Christmas Eve, one year, I was in a flat overlooking the Thames, a real James Bond style flat. It was like uber wealth, and I was photographing it. And I just had this feeling, when Christmas holidays are over, I'm not coming back to this job. That's it. I give it up. And I gave it up before I physically spoke to the people. I just looked over the Thames and I had this real knowing, that's it. And I had no idea what I was going to do afterwards. So roll on. Great decisions, great endings, feeling into the end of a cycle is part of what I do. And about 3 days later, I received an email that said, do you want to change your life? And I was like, yes, I do. And it was completely cheesy. It was everything that my background would find very suspicious. For instance, the sort of Americanization of hard sell. And it's like, you've got 24 seconds to make this choice now or it's gone. It's like that. So there was a little bit of that in it. And yet I experienced this trust with this group of people, and I had to fill in a form. They called me the next day. They then said that the form showed that I was a calculated risk taker, and they were prepared to let me into the training. And so I had no money, and they wanted, or I didn't have available money, and they said, well, do you have a credit card? And even that would be seen as kind of uncomfortable, definitely for people like my parents. They would find that like, whoa, danger. Instead, I felt the opposite. I felt liberation. I can release myself into this new arena with money that's credit, and it's a good calculated risk. So they then gave me 4 options of what I wanted to do, and it was like trading, creating a business online. I chose property. And 3 months into the training, the homework was to go and buy a property. And again, this is that calculated risk-taking piece. I was like, oh, come on, you can't give homework like that. And they did. And the coach that I was speaking to, he just said, if you cannot at this point know what you're doing in property, the figures, the the angle you're using, the style that you're going out with, then you can never train unless it's like in the real world. And so I did. And that ended up becoming a 10 million pound and dollar plus business. Not immediately and not without, to add in, like, there were stages of this thing. It wasn't just like, boom, you won 10 million. It's quite different. I was trained on so many levels to look at how I could build something. And then again, I had another moment where it was like there was a 2008 property crash. And I had a feeling again, similar feeling to the other one, something's going to change here. So I ended up letting that go, selling some of the properties, keeping some, changing my entire strategy and going into the next thing. And I've done that many times over. I teach people how to navigate this kind of daring waters, and to let go. Like, really, it's not just about what can I bring in? It's like, yeah, but what can you let go? So I currently don't work in property, although it's starting up again. Somebody's asked me to get involved in something, so it started up again. And these cycles, if we can move with the cycles and the rhythms that we're being called to, I do believe that's one of the highest levels of success that you'll have. Yeah, I don't remember how I digressed into that, but I think it's an important piece of this. So, and the communities. I know what I was going to say. Along the way, when I first started in property, so 22 years ago, I would be like speaking to heads of banks, not even, a range of people in the bank, like the head of the bank. And I remember hiding my tattoos because I had finger tattoos, and I thought, oh my God, like, successful people, you can't do that. So I would literally have this entire way of just using my right hand throughout the whole meeting and covering up. I've got some other tattoos as well. And that was the genre. That really was the way that people were. They didn't talk about spirituality. They would leak out little bits and pieces. When I came later to creating a yoga festival, that was another big piece of work that I did. I remember saying to people who were much younger than me, well, I want to mix it up. I want to bring in cacao ceremonies, ceremony in general, shamanism, the yoga, the meditation, the various different things, the experiences. And people who are much younger than me just went, oh, you can't do that. You can't mix these things up. I was like, yeah, I can. Watch me. It's like, and they were all like, oh, caution, scary. And so I said, it's my festival, basically. I can do what I want. So I'm bringing in this mix of things and music and all sorts of things. And the next year, that's exactly what happened in the London scene. You started to see shamanic ceremonies, cacao ceremonies entering yoga centers. And I actually believe that I was key to that in London, for sure. It was not happening. They would separate all of these spiritual things, and the yogis would find shamanism perhaps a bit like, whoa, where are we going? It's a bit dangerous. What we've got now is we've gone through a lot of that forerunner activity with people who are probably older than, the 30-year-old now who are doing all this stuff. We had to make that happen because it didn't exist. And now, because I have tattoos, because I have this spiritual experience, very straight business people are very interested in it. They're like, hey, we don't want just another economic advisor. We want somebody who understands, like, when are you going to launch? When are you going to pull back? What are these cycles that we're working with? So it's flipped and changed and opened, actually.
Yes, it's like bringing in the fresh energy. And when you tap in, when you're feeling spirit and you're feeling the tides as they move and working with the seasons, with our true nature, which is nature, then you're able to be on the top of the wave instead of under the wave or behind the wave, right? And I just feel like that's why I resonated so deeply with you, because you are multi-passionate, right? We have so many layers. And when I started business, the programming was you have to niche down if you're going to be successful. So these stories we take in, right? And I just couldn't. Like it almost was painful for me because like I can't. I have so much. Like there's so much brimming, there's so many lifetimes coming through that I can't niche down. And now I'm ready. I'm ready to bring it all to this pinnacle. It's not even
Yeah.
niching down, it's bringing it into my queendom. That's what I love so much. And you were the person, you were the soul, you were the spirit, you were the guide to come in. And wow, since you've come in, life has unfolded so fast, so accelerated, and I'm here for it. But I had to go through that birthing process that you helped me through. And I want to get into that a little bit because I think it's so important for people to realize as we move deeper into the photonic belt of light and as we move deeper into the age of Aquarius and deeper into ourselves, into that nature that we know, it really does come down to saying yes, being daring, right? Finding that potency and opening up to it and jumping off the ledge and trusting that whoever, was meant to come in that you say yes to is gonna fly with you, which is exactly what you've been doing with me in a way that you've given me enough freedom and independence that's almost scary enough that it's creating more trust for me. You know what I mean? It's not like you're clung or velcroed to me being like, I'll keep you safe this whole time. You're like, I've got you, but you've got you.
Yeah. Well, that's like an initiation. And, the true path of how I've taught people as if it's an initiation because I initiate people. So I've been doing the initiatory path for about 30 years at this point as a high priestess, initiating people. I have to get to know them very well. I have to stand up to them. So that's like a great coach as well. Somebody who goes, I'm not sure about that one, darling. No. And there's been a lot of training, but ultimately you cannot initiate somebody without them going on their own path. And so to coach somebody and to say there is only one system and you must learn this system and squeeze yourself into somebody else's system, it's never worked for me. I'm a role model for women, I think, who do multiple things, multiple different success streams. I've never done one thing. And so like it's like I recognize that. But I'm glad that you're bringing in the word potent because you can become too dilute if you're doing too many little smatterings of things. And I'll give you an example. Like I have got so many spiritual trades up my sleeve kind of thing. I can teach yoga. I taught that for years. I've been doing tarot since I was 14. So there's tendencies. I play singing bowls. I do sound baths. I do ceremony, blah, blah, blah. But there's a tendency. And when I met you, you were right in that tendency to offer too many smaller things, which are all at a low level and take up a lot of time. So, I could always whip out, hey, I do tarot, but in general, I have never, ever sold my tarot. I use it with my clients because I think it's useful and I use it with me, but it's not something that then became, an offshoot, like I'm a tarot reader, because it really is not aligned to the level that I want to go, which is like huge, 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 huge up here. So yeah, it's like, potence is different. You can bring all of those things into something, but you want to start getting known for a certain stream of consciousness, even within those things that you could offer, because I know you're offering a few different things, but it's like, no, it's more potent now, and you don't have all these little offshoots going on, which actually take up all your energy.
Right, because you know better than anyone. I don't know that I've ever let anyone in besides my parents to the amount of overwhelm that I was in, and you just you were able to hold it and just be there while I went through. It was like a week of the final move through the birth canal where I was screaming into the ground, I was beating a stick on the ground, I was waking up with tears every day, and I wanted to retreat. I wanted to retreat. It was so uncomfortable. And I got there because I kept showing up. It was my intention. I knew what was possible. I knew I was at an end cycle. Yet you have to be able to trust, because you know you're at the end cycle, but you've got to end that in order to realize the magnificence of what's coming in. And wow, are we rolling in it? And I'm like, yes, I'm so much yes energy with everything that you're guiding me into, that I am just falling things away, and there's no charge anymore. Like, I got through the charge and now it's just full queendom. And I just, first of all, I thank you so much. But what I want to highlight here, which is when you're talking about the end cycles, and this is something as a kid, I always understood this and I couldn't understand why no one else seemed to. It's the evolution. And I was like, well, wait, we're here to evolve. Like, relationships aren't meant to be forever. And I couldn't understand why people were making themselves miserable and, you know, creating all this anger and hatred and division in these relationships, when I was like, wait, we're supposed to be able to evolve and in a healthy way. And so I want to highlight in Lammas is you end the cycle at the high frequency, because in our, oh, hello Kitty, hi
Hello, cat
Phoenix,
bum.
in
Phoenix is
in
with us.
our programming in our programming, we're taught to basically bleed it dry. And then we get to this crisis point, or almost this point of no return. So I would love for you to touch on that a little bit, because that is potent to me.
Yeah, and for anybody who sees this and maybe you've missed Lammas or something, just do it anyway. Just follow the season with this. So I'm very excited this year because I think the last time I saw a full moon on Lammas was easily 20 years ago, something like that, long time ago. And I look for symbols and I work with symbols and cycles. And so to see the full moon on Lammas itself, full moon starts on Tuesday, August the 1st at Pacific time would be, oh God,
I think it's 6:30.
11:32. No, it's in the morning. It's something like 11:32. For the Brits, it's 7:32 in the evening tomorrow, basically. And then Lammas, technically, it takes place over August the 2nd. So from the evening of the 1st into the 2nd for the Brits, we are going to see this connection, and it's highlighting something that the full moon is always about: biggest celebration, biggest expression, superpower, all of that, and it lasts for 3 days. So the teaching of Lammas, which is an ancient, hundreds of thousands year old festival, and it would have been throughout all of Europe, very much influencing many of the Americans, you know, the people who are over there, would be in your consciousness. And then it also ties in with lots of indigenous harvest festivals, that there's a teaching that is thus, that at the year has gone round, the king and queen are now in their full power. It's past the summer solstice, where you had to stand in your power and become this energy of like, I'm the one, I am the one. And with that energy, as you go through, the harvest is then growing, and you come to a place where the harvest is as high as you can imagine. And I was last week in Sweden, and it is that high. Like, the corn has grown, the wheat has grown. And if you're the farmer, which you are from this perspective, you're looking at your life, at what is the harvest of this year? What did you sow all those thoughts ago, all those many actions ago, all the intentions ago, all the manifestations ago, to cause the harvest in your life right now? When you look at it like the farmer has a few days to see when it's exactly like, and I've seen that being out in a harvest situation, where you see, ooh, one day it's almost there, but it's not quite. It's like a flower unfolding. Oh, could it just open a bit more? Oh, you know, is it? But there'll be a moment where if it opens too much, you've gone past the peak. So farmers have to choose this moment of peak. And there's two actions that come out of that. One is full celebration of what you have experienced, gratitude, honoring. You think about the harvest is, we have to chop it down to feed the people. That's the whole point. It's this amazing thing. So the chopping bit is the sacrificial piece, the pruning piece, which comes in, and it's a really deep teaching. When you look at your life, if you could even just shut your eyes now and feel into what feels a bit heavy, what isn't quite working, what is a relationship that's really not going anywhere. You may have been in it forever, right? And it seems like it should continue. However, there's something that is just draining you from being in it. These are the questions you need to ask at this time of harvest. Like, what is not giving you life force? And this is the pruning aspect. So it's time to commit to letting them go. And we talked about it in a businessy sense. I've spoken about it with somebody recently in a relationship sense, where she was saying, but he's a really nice guy. He's lovely, you know, he's all of this. And I'm like, but she said he's very serious, and he does not, I don't have the joy and the expression. I need that. I'm like, okay, there's your answer, right? There's your answer right there. Do you feel that this is going to evolve into the happy state? And she's like, no. So she's like, but if I could, you know, just keep it going a little longer. And I'm like, no, chop it. You've got to honor and be courageous enough to go, this is not working. This drains me. This relationship is over. And rather than letting it die in a rotten way, and that's the harvest, if you cut it too late, it's rotten. It cannot feed the people, right? It's like a disaster, actually, if you can't bring the harvest in. What happens right after it? That's a very masculine moment. And often in the rituals and the symbols, it is the death of the king. It's the death of the old king for the new one to rise up, the new energetic of the masculine. But for the feminine, once you've chopped, what you've got is space in the fields, this vast spaciousness. And I advise my clients in business, don't really be doing anything in business. Don't try and launch something in August. Don't try and like be, you know, full on the doing, the masculine, whatever. Instead, do things like content creation, photographic shoots, video shoots, writing, preparation, whatever, because that space after the harvest is meant to be. It's contemplation. It's why so many people go on holiday. It's why the kids have holidays. It's all written into a very ancient cycle that we need, because come September, it's like, boom, we're straight back in with that rush of energy. And we need that spaciousness to be able to, you know, really develop and receive messages and legacy and the mysteries. So that's a big mouthful, but yeah, you get it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Inara. That was such a gorgeous journey we just went through. And what I like to feel into with this is at Lammas is when the sweetest harvest starts to come through. So I want people like those first cherry tomatoes, right? The first time you bite into something that comes from the earth, the taste is so different than if you get something that's been transported all over, you know, things like that. And like, stay in that feeling, stay in that sensation, and let that guide you and hold you through this time until we come to the final harvest, you know, in the fall, which is the like where it's full, like it's done, right? And then there's that new cycle and that new movement. And so that's why I called this the call of the queen. This isn't just for women or people who identify as female. This is for all genders. This is the call of the queen, of the deepest places of receiving, because when we can honor what's coming through, the actual physicality or action just happens. It comes. It's easeful. And for you, when you came into my life, this is a pretty wild story. I feel like I should just touch on it because I had no idea who you were, right? Of course I knew who you were, but not in the physicality. And I randomly threw a search. Like, I don't even have time to do searches. You know that. Like, I was so overwhelmed, and threw a search on something. Someone came up and you were on her summit. This was the day before you came on her summit. I jumped on that summit because I got the call.
Yeah.
And I watched your interview. I'll say out of that whole summit, I only had time to watch 2, but I watched yours and I was like, that was it. That was
Yeah.
it. And I contacted you immediately. We were on a Discover. I followed the call of the Queen. I followed the messages that I was receiving. I said yes to my innate guidance system. And now my life, the transformation, y'all, it's like, it is spirit blowing.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is that I know that when I go on these things like this one, for instance, there may be one person who I touch, and it's not always about the money. It's actually, I've spoken to these women who blow my mind. There was one woman who reached out to me a few years back, and she had 5 kids in a trailer, had had a disaster of a relationship with an abusive man, and then she hit the road, and she was basically just driving her RV around all over the place to amazing places, homeschooling, dealing with 5 kids. She was like full on a real medicine woman. And I connected with her and I was able to just give her some advice about how to put some offerings together to make money. And I know that I changed her life completely. It was like the most beautiful, oh, I love you, you're amazing, kind of thing mutually. And so it's like those moments of like there's a little doorway that opens, and sometimes it's really to coach somebody like with you. We want to shift your business in a massive way, so it was appropriate to do that. Other times it's just a conversation. I will never see those people again, and I feel like, oh God, just so blessed that we had this moment.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's how dynamic it is, because for me, it actually was about the money. Like I
Yeah.
needed to go through that level, because what I talk about in my manifestation courses is like, it's reducing the charge, because the things that spoke to me about you is high priestess, of course, my everything, my cells perked up. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is who I've been calling in. Big business, big impact, right? Like big resources for conscious creators that are working our tails off, right, to raise the consciousness of this collective, this planet, this universe, to become galactic citizens, to work with the cycles. And so for me, it really was moving through that final limitation that was
Oh
holding
no.
me in the
Pandora, sorry, that's the other one standing on that. Did you hear that? Dong,
yeah.
dong, dong. Sorry, baby. The
Right,
cats are
moving, it was moving through that limitation that was the final, it was like the final tether of what was holding me back. But I was so ready, and yet I had to show up. I couldn't just hire you and then expect you to do it. Like I had to show up fully in my full vulnerability in order to move through it. And like I said, wow, because y'all, I'll just say right now, a lot of my listeners know astrology because I talk astrology a lot, but I have my moon and Venus in my second house. And so for me, especially financially, I was raised also in the Midwest. Hard worker, hard work ethic. I do it all. My parents did it all for their small business. Sometimes my dad worked 7 days a week, and I was playing that out. Right.
yeah.
And it was a lot of effort. And it came the overwhelm, the tears that I was in. Our first call, I'll never forget it, because I was just in full tears. And I was like, she doesn't even know the power because I'm just bawling. Right. But that's the point where it's your body consciousness leading you into it. Like I said, yes, even though it was so uncomfortable, I knew it was going to take me to the breakthrough. And that's so important for us to realize, especially when we have this culture of convenience, of immediate gratification, of what we see on social media as the results, because we've got to get into the arena as well. But when you have someone like Inara, who came through for me in such a goddess, queen, beautiful way, it is so delightful, because you said it. You said this is where we are in celebration. And you all, I am like celebrating. There are fireworks going off in me completely. And I was in tears. What was it? 3 weeks ago, Inara? 4
Yeah,
weeks ago?
you were in overwhelm, you were exhausted. I see this a lot, and I would say that if you're assessing your life, you out there, audience people, ask yourself, what is the thing that really is the obstacle? So it's usually one of 3 things. One is time. I have no time, or you think you have no time. Money. I have no money or resources or any ability, blah, 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 or the money will stop me. If it's too high a price, it will stop me. And the third one is I'm not good enough. And that's usually, who am I to, am I a fraud? Am I, somehow fake because my experiences aren't enough to make me an authority? And the big one that goes on with those people is they need external validation. They're often looking for, they need an accreditation to make themselves real. And I teach mostly, you are the authority. You are not, you don't need accreditation, and money, boy, can I play with money. I mean, I've got the money gene for some reason. It's in every astrology that I do, or Chinese or Indian or whatever moon. There's something about money. Now, in this life, I was born into a family who didn't have a lot of money. My dad went to school with kids who had no shoes, for instance, one generation ago. But through their brains, they were the ones they're all academics. They're quite scientific, actually. So I've been born as the black sheep in a great way, as the artistic and business one. They're all academics, and they look for their answers through, science and logic. It takes something for you to take on money when you haven't had it. And actually, my family would say, they would have in the background, rich people are bad, rich people are the ones who have messed up the world. There'd be a story running. And I had to completely break that apart for me to be as powerful as I am. It's not from this life, the money thing. It's definitely from previous life. I believe in reincarnation. So, I feel like I've had my hands in a lot of money at some point. And this life, I don't need to. Although I touch money, it's all about happiness. It's all about, the experience. But I can use that to work with big money because it can't affect me. I'm not like, oh, I want the big money clients or anything. I just don't. I just genuinely don't. I want people to be able to find their edge and move through it. And that's the daring thing.
Yes. I mean, I totally resonate with you in, letting people know, as I help people rediscover and reawaken their ancient encoded knowledge within their cells, you'll know when you're doing the thing that you came here to do, if that's something that you're interested in. We have free will, right? If that is something that's calling to you in this iteration, like you'll know because it lights you up. It creates a fire in you that doesn't stop burning, right? But the thing that you were doing for me, and I know you're going to take me further, and that's why I'm so excited, is I decreased the charge from playing with $1,000. When I say play, it's like there's no charge on it anymore. Yeah. You took me from 1 to 10 within a week. And now there's no charge on 10. And there's actually no charge above that because I did such deep work in that first week with you. And y'all, this is funny. I got to tell you this because there were moments like I couldn't find a website for Inara. I couldn't find all of the things that we're so used to seeing.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was like I was doing something more daring than I had ever done financially in my business, right? Because I was running a program that wasn't how it works. And yet I had no evidence. And so I knew I was like, my spirit was like, do it, jump off the ledge. Even when I didn't have the experience or the evidence to look at in front of my face. And I did it with like, and that's what I love so much. So I'm now going from 10 to 100,000 and I plan to go above 100,000. And I know I have so much trust now that I'm going to get there. It's just wildly exciting. And it's not that that's what it is for everybody. Like Inara said, that's not her charge. Like there might be a charge on something, and you're going to magnetize the person, the community, the situation, the experience that is going to help you move through. But you've got to be daring. You've got to find the potency in it to jump, to take the risk, right?
Exactly. I mean, the thing is about money, it's an interesting one because, like I said, I didn't have it in my background as such. It wasn't like I come from wealth or I come from business or anything like that. I don't. But I know that there was a point when, let's say 20 quid or $20 to you would have been a big deal for me to navigate and think, oh, am I paying that $20 for this thing? Like it might be an experience or God knows what, some yoga thing. And the mindset is no different. I promise you, from when I've had to deal with millions, there is no difference. What you take on is that, you know, the way your operating system is. So mine is like this. I go yes to something, like yes. And then I just have to allow the conversation to go on, because the conversation is all the family, you know, the history of the family, the DNA, all of that needs to complain about it. And it does do that. It goes, oh, are you sure? You know, really, is it worth it? Oh, I'm not sure, you know, blah, blah, blah. I let it play out. And now I go, okay, thanks so much for this pile of energetic. I'm going to just put you over there. And then I go, yes, again. So it's like a double yes with something in between, which is the sandwich of all the concerns, all the and it will occur. And this is a yogic idea that one of the biggest, they have yoga tenets which are good to live by, all the things that are good to think and be, and they've got the ones which are to avoid and not do, right? And there's one that's very famous, it's fear of death. So we will experience that moment, the sandwich that I was talking about, that's actually my fear of death coming out. Because I'm like, oh, if I spent this money, like, you know, way back in the day, it was like, if I spent this 20 quid, you know, there's fear there. When you get into what the real fear is, it's fear of death. It's like you could be annihilated somehow, something would happen. When it gets to millions, you know, you would think it was much, much bigger. I promise you it isn't. It's the same energetic that comes up, which is like, oh, fear of death, you know, I could be annihilated somehow. And then you get the fight or flight. So you've got to learn to handle the concerns that you will bring to the table, which will always be family lineage. A big chunk of it is that. And then, you know, direct experience, what's happened to you. If it's not familiar, because for some people, they might have had parents who dealt with millions, or they were dealing with business decisions like that. It's just putting yourself in the position where you're going, I feel it's a yes, then I got to have this little blah, 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 conversation, then I go shoot over there, and then I go, oh yes, again, thanks. And you watch how your yeses compound into speed and potency of results. Like, it's just amazing when you say yes to the uncomfortable, you know, that something is really uncomfortable, you say yes to it, there's this trajectory that starts to happen that you accelerate.
Oh, is the acceleration there? There's a point where I'm like, should I be nervous about all the yeses I'm saying now? Like,
Never.
it's unbelievable, right? Like, it has
Yeah.
absolutely just evolved in such a beautiful way. Like, I have hired so many people since then, and it continues to be a yes, and it continues to be trust, even without the evidence. And I know that the evidence is coming. I know that this is building in such a gorgeous way. It's also interesting because what I teach people in the manifestation course is, how do you find your way into trust? How do you find your way into the soft nervous system? And I feel like that's what you were just talking about. You know, when that story comes up, you let yourself feel it, and then it's like, oh, thank you. Like, thank you, goodbye, thank you, next, right? And then you come back to the yes. And so for me, another thing that I've been doing to find my way into that softness is I've started asking myself a question when something comes up, right? When I'm feeling maybe a little bit of that resistance, I'm like, if I left this realm in 6 months, would I be bummed that I didn't do it? Like, as simple as that for me has changed things in a really profound way.
Yeah, I get it. And I do something which is a similar check-in, but I ask the question, if it was the last day that you had on the planet, and it's a good death, you're having a good death, it's all pleasant, and you know, the family's there and whatever. So we're not talking about fear of death in that way, but it is the last day, and you are looking back on all your experiences. Ask yourself, is there something I would have regretted? That will, right now, it will fine tune you to say, oh, I actually need to do this thing, or I need to express this thing, or this business idea, or this project, or falling in love, or, having a family, whatever it is. And then, there are things that, funnily enough, we just stepped on that. There are things, I didn't have kids, and I've told you that before. I told you this story that I always wanted kids. And in the end, I didn't have kids. And it was one of the things that I would say caused great sadness. Not now, but, at a time, I really had to deal with it. There will be things that don't happen for you. There will be paths that you are not able to express in the way that you wanted, because life is happening for you, not to you. And so the more that I got into the things that my regrets, I don't have regrets that I didn't have kids now. There was a point when I would have framed it like that. I wish I had. But now I'm just like, no, there was a big motivational feeling for me to have kids. And now that pours out into many of the other things that I do that I wouldn't, like I look after 2 African girls. A friend of mine died in Africa, and I look after these girls. I've brought them up really in a very long distance way. And now they're 20, I think 3 and 2. And I'm really working with their visions, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that if I'd had my own kids. There'd be a whole other arrangement of the mother energy that I have. And so it's not that you just get the life in its perfection. There will be some tragedies, there will be some sadness and some heartbreaks, but it's how you deal with it. It's like, am I still living? You can't shut down over that, like that was the thing that didn't happen, so therefore it's the end. The same timing that happened with me not having kids was exactly the same timing when I started making the bigger decisions and choices around these creations that I was doing in the world. I would say it was almost exactly the same time that my business sense or self started to accelerate. So there was a reason for it. And I'm just giving you that perspective because it's not just all about what you want. It's about also the path, and the path you can never fall off. The path is just where your feet are. It's not like, oh, I took a wrong turn or I did something wrong or whatever. That's old shame-based teaching. And I don't believe in any of that,
Right. And I mean, it's almost our ego desires, like that comes in definitely, especially with, the stories and the dominant narrative around us, like what's normalized and what are we seeing? And if we don't have that, what's the story that we take on from there? And it's interesting that you say that, because the first thing that came to me when you said, if it was my last day, in a beautiful way, a gorgeous transition, what came through when you were saying that is joy of life. Right. Because as I channel, it's like things just come through as people talk. And it was like, you're looking at the joy of life instead of the fear of life ending. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful way to come back. It's like, take yourself forward to come back. And what else is interesting that we brought up the mothering is, especially at Lammas, I think, is that, when I went through, 14 years of intense grief after my daughter was stillborn. And then the rest of my children, grew wings instead of legs. And my health tanked and my relationship, was gone, all of the things. But when I got to the point where I finally accepted that I wasn't going to have a biological child, and I had to biologically get there, I literally had to biologically get there, is when I gave myself the permission and felt the liberation to leave the business that I had that was very successful, but there was a tapping on my soul. There was something so much deeper, a bigger calling that I was being drawn towards for years. But I was so focused on having a biological child, especially as an adopted kid, being separated from my spiritual lineage. But that was a huge catalyst. Like, you come up to these catalysts along the way that really actually catapult you forward if you're tuning in, right? If you are saying yes and co-creating with them. And then this is the reason I wanted to bring this up, is that when you came in, I think it was in that first week when I was like, it was my full-time job that first week to get through the utter guttural pain of that discomfort, of that ledge, of that limitation. I was doing a tapping session about dreaming big, and it was just a normal tapping session. And suddenly I just started bawling. And I had this realization in my body that my body was still holding on to the fact that my biggest dream didn't come true. Even though I had accepted it, even though I had, evolved and found the transformation of it, like on the surface, consciously, subconsciously, my body still was holding on to, but wait, your biggest dream never came true. So why do you think this dream's going to come true?
Yeah.
And that was a moment. That was a pinnacle moment that I tapped through and released that imprint of my body and brought it consciously so that I could let it fully out. And I feel like that, again, was a catalyst to everything that was coming into my vortex. It was so dizzying that first week of me and you, because it happened within 3 days. We had our discovery call and you were asking me to say yes within 3 days. And I was like,
whoa. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I felt with you, it's like, okay, there's the current. I use a lot of watery language because I am immersed in water as a teacher. I work with the moon, it's completely works with the water, the tides and all of that. But it was like that. The current is flowing. Get in. Like, it's time, there's no reason to wait. That's like a slow rotten harvest. Again, that teaching of Lammas, it's like, when there is a moment and you're being called, say yes. Just jump. There's so much potency in that, rather than waiting it out and the logic and the this and the that. I know we were going to have an amazing relationship because of that.
Yeah. And it was your confidence. It was the confidence that came through in the emails, and you were so invested, but yet not controlling. Does that make sense when I say that?
Totally. Yes. I mean, I want people to be like that with me. I'm very direct. And in initiation, you have to ask your high priestess for an initiation 3 times. So I want to ask for initiation. I want to ask for initiation. I want to ask for initiation. I mean, it's not technically what you're supposed to do, but I was like, come on, let's go. So the recipient of it has to ask for it. And usually there'll be a phase of time that they would ask 3 times over to be sure. But sometimes it's just like, you just need that other person to hold your hand and get you through that bit, because in general, we don't have friends who will do that for us, not with the business stuff in general. I don't come from a family of business people. I don't really have a huge array myself of people who think like this every day. I'm a projector in terms of human design. So all I see is how I can make everybody great. Like, it's like this, just the vision is going out. And there is no point in waiting unless there's a real cycle reason, because I do believe there are some times where you need to wait for the optimum moment to launch something or whatever, or there's a phase of a downtime like August. If you'd have popped in middle of August, I would have said, let's wait till September. And that would have been appropriate, right?
Yeah, I popped in at exactly the right time. And I feel like, did you send me 3 emails and then I said yes? I almost feel like that happened.
Maybe. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. You have to look back, but it would normally be you having to ask me 3 times in an initiation situation.
Maybe
right?
I sent 3 emails to you and I said yes. The other thing that I find that I've been tapping into recently is I'm coming back to potency, because that's the word. It's there. The vibration is so high for me, but the potency of the women that I've been called to that have been in my world are actually mothers without living children in this realm. And I feel like that mothering energy is so powerful in everything they're creating in their life. And I'm one of them, right? I've been initiated into that. And so now, after I cleared that subconscious wound and imprint, it's like I am rising so quickly into that that I consciously thought I was there, but now I'm like, oh wow, this is so much more juicy than I ever even knew was possible. And so on that tip, or on that energy signature, I actually want to drop into Sinead O'Connor,
Yeah.
because I had a deep ceremony with her yesterday. She came to me in the most powerful way. And it's Lammas. It's
Yeah.
the fact that all of these women and men and them are talking about her. Like, and we keep talking about the death cycle. And when I was
Yeah.
a kid, I had so much comfort with standing with dead bodies. Like
Yeah.
at wakes, I would just go up and stand with them. I just had a comfort with it, right? And
Yeah.
that's where I feel like
Yeah.
some of us, we realize the life and death cycle and the importance of it and the potency of it, right? And so with Sinead, I just want to talk about how her impact is so high in life and how it's even getting higher in
Yeah.
transition.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think she was an incredible being. I've read quite a bit since she's died, and just to see what she actually did. I mean, she was such a forerunner of talking about the abuse in the Catholic Church, right? And the ripping up of the Pope's symbolic thing. I was trying to think of what's an equivalent where you can have your entire career destroyed because you do this one symbolic act. I was speaking with a friend about it the other day, and would it be to rip up images of the royal family? Would it be to rip up in Britain, what would it be? To rip up the prime minister? Probably not. I don't think. You're hitting a real nerve of something where people that's old order. All the old quite fundamentalist religions which involve shame and teach shame and teach sin and teach it's a control religion, right? Spirituality or spiritual paths will never ever have that angle of you're born fresh as a perfect little baby and you're already condemned to sin, you're already dirty somehow. She was speaking out about that and the twisted abuse which has gone on forever in some of these fundamentalist religions. And I think she was incredibly brave, but she lost a massive career out of that. It was like she was like burned alive at a stake in a sort of symbolic way for doing that. To me, I mean, it's such a radical space to be in, and I'm on that level. I could be so radical as well. But what would be that thing that you think would be the equivalent, in the States? I don't know. In England, it would be definitely probably the royal family or somebody like that. I don't think religion would have the same effect if I don't even know the Archbishop of Canterbury, what he looks like, but it would not have the same impact, right? So she hit direct nerve straight into that emotional space. And now what's happening is all these people are coming out and supporting her now and just saying, look at what has been revealed. She was a forerunner. She was ahead of her time. I also think, I heard about this in some spiritual speak many, many years ago, but it was about we have timings that we can leave at different times and have a complete path. And it could be there's one when you're young, there's one when you're middle, and some people can have it when you stay really old, but it doesn't matter. You are complete. The whole cycle has been done. So we will feel like, oh, she was young, why would it happen? It's sad that her son had committed suicide as well, but there's a completion for her, and now look at her work go on.
Yes. That's what I am tapping into, is the impact that she's making. It's reverberating out. It's rising. The fact that she left and transitioned, like, I'm not sure if it was exactly, but very near the day of Magdalene. Like, are you kidding? You can't even make that up. It is so huge. It is so big. And the rise of the Magdalene within us all. Like, I am just this queendom, right? Like the divine feminine of us all, this beautiful space of what had been persecuted and what we are now sharing in droves And like I said, I sat in 2 circles yesterday, tears in my eyes, where Sinead just came to me in such a powerful way that I left anything that I had to do. Time did not exist. And I just spent the entire day with her. And it
Yeah.
ended with a rainbow. Like, she
Oh,
literally sent a rainbow to become one of my elder council. Like, that's the thing. When we realize how special not just life on earth is, this is actually the hard part, right? This is where we go through the shadow, the experience, the contrast, the duality. And there's a lot of growth here. But when we can really revere, and this is why I've always been fascinated with the Vikings, when we can revere that Valhalla, when we can revere the realm of unconditioned. And I like how you said that we can be complete at different times, but yet when we hold that story, just like I held, like, I need to have a biological child because I wasn't with my biological mother. I abandoned my daughter by her being stillbirth, like all of those stories. When we can transcend them and actually realize that there's something so much bigger than
yeah.
what we only see on this plane.
Yeah.
Wow, the power is really there. And it's so accessible for us now because the light is so accelerated. Our consciousness is rising. And after yesterday, I feel like we just took a huge, giant leap. That's why
Yeah.
I was so excited to get in here with you today. I was like, ooh, we're going to do even more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope you feel it. It's, we are on court. It's just happening now. It's an effervescent. And I think this week is really super powerful with, be clear on what you're letting go of. Really. I've done ritual all weekend as well. I've been involved in several, and to be continued all week. And I'll be going to Glastonbury as well. So there'll be even more. And it just feels like I've had moments of sheer bliss in the weekend, like just feeling my energetics are just flowing and it's all good and there's no problem. Everything is all good. A real sense of happiness and a real sense of what I needed to tweak and let go, but there is no fear. This is like, hey, the hero's journey, the heroine's journey. Let's get on with it.
Yes. And it's that sense of ecstasy, the natural high that we were
Yeah.
here to experience and not numb out. That was what I was tapping into yesterday because I was with you. I was so vibrating on the highest plane yesterday. And I just
Yeah.
let myself be in it and marinate in it for as long as it wants to stay without tensing down and controlling it and holding it. Right.
Yeah.
Mm. Let's all just sit with that for a second, like, or for just a moment. Inara, that feels complete to me. It feels really beautiful. If there's
Yeah.
any final thoughts or transmissions you want to share, please do, and let people know where they can get a hold of you.
I feel complete as well. No, the final transmission is just to say, celebrate, 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 because this is the harvest and what you've achieved is amazing, even if it doesn't look like it to you. Find the positive and then really look at what is draining, what is stopping you from being as potent as you can, and prune it. It's pruning time. Prune your tree. And how you can find me is if you can see my name below, the way it's spelled, Inarra Griffyn. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Because I'm moving into a new genre, shall we say, of aphrodisiacs, which I've told Laurie about, I'm in the process of creating a new website around that. And that's my new work, that I'm creating different lineages, all the aphrodisiac herbs and scents that would be in different cultures, to do like a library of aphrodisiacs. So that's a big piece of what I'm being called to do. And so you will see a website when that happens, and it's called The Queen's Pleasure. The Queen's Pleasure. So to be continued. But really, if you want to connect with me, just hit me up on Instagram as my name, and you'll see me, speaking about these different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will absolutely include those links below. And can I just say, I love that you are reawakening the tactile, the senses, right?
Yeah.
Because the more that we are reawaken everyone, the more we get the innate guidance and the hits, the
Oh
intuition
yeah.
that we're here to follow. right?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, since I've been on this path of the aphrodisiacs, natural, raw, vegan, the whole thing, hand poured, etc. There are kids that I've spoken to in coffee shops who are my sort of local when I go for my matches, and they've asked me what do I do, and I said, okay, well, I'm a spiritual business coach, but I'm actually creating a line of aphrodisiacs. They're all like, oh, we want to try it. We want to try it with our girlfriends. We want to try it on ourselves. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to write me testimonial. And they're really cool. They're like 19. It doesn't phase them at all. That's the difference between this sort of generation, right? They're really wise, and the guys are really wise. It's not like, oh, I'm so, embarrassed by this conversation. It's quite amazing. But I made these so that women would put themselves first. That's what it's all about. It's not about get a partner. It's about no, get you in the mood for you and your life.
Well,
Yeah,
right, because then that's where the frequency match of a partner comes. When we're
exactly.
in the deepest, most relentless states of self-love, of this journey, this body, this vehicle, all of these
Yeah.
senses, like everything elevates from there. And what we're doing, just like this transmission that Inara and I are sharing and putting out into the world, is changing the collective for the generations to come. We
Totally.
are the gate openers. We're not holding anything. We're opening
Yeah.
the gates in a way for so many, for our great grandchildren, great great grandchildren, right? The generations. We get to look back as the ancestors in that beautiful realm and see what we've planted here. We get to see
Yeah.
that in Lammas, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, oh, the
So
last thing that
blessings on your path, really, and do the work this week. It's important.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's where that comes from. And that's where that ripple effect and that emanation comes out into the collective. And then others tap into that without knowing what they're tapping into, but they get guided into it. So this
Yeah.
is how we change the world in quantum ways, right? I
Yes.
get it through like this sonic, this light boom through the world. But oh, I almost forgot. Inara and I are both going to be live on a manifestation summit coming up in the middle of August. I just
Oh, yeah,
jumped
we
on
are.
yesterday. What's the summit called? Do you remember?
It's the secrets of manifestation, I believe. And I've actually posted it on my Facebook, yesterday, but I have a newsletter. You can always sign up for my newsletter. If you look on my Instagram, look on my link tree, there's a way to sign up. And I'm always putting out other people's information as well.
Yeah. So we will
Yeah.
both be there live. Make sure you jump in. I will include the link below in the
Yeah.
show notes. And Inara, love, 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 love,
Love,
love,
love,
so
love,
much
love, love.
love.
Mwah.
Thank you so much for
So much
joining
love.
us and bringing your queendom to this
Yeah.
this space. I love you.
I love you too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. Until next time, don't forget to keep looking up.